God's calendar, some become eternal milestones. And 2026 may be one of them. While the world lives distracted, decisions are being made, discreetly, behind the scenes of power, that could change the course of the Christian faith forever. Movements are underway, laws are being discussed, and discourses on unity and global rest are gaining momentum under the pretext of saving the planet. But behind this agenda lies something much deeper. Something that prophecies have been announcing for centuries. A final confrontation between God's law and the decrees of men. The Sabbath and Sunday, two spiritual symbols that have long divided Christendom, are about to become the center of a global crisis. And 2026 may be the year when this division ceases to be theological and becomes legal, political, and mandatory. Rome is preparing. Nations are aligning. And God's remnant will be tested before the whole world. Today, you will understand why so many signs point to a decisive time. And why 2026 may mark the beginning of the greatest spiritual confrontation of the modern era. If you feel that something big is about to happen, if you realize that prophecies are being fulfilled before our eyes, then support this message. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell to continue receiving prophetic studies and alerts like this one. And write here in the comments. Do you believe that 2026 will mark the beginning of the final confrontation between the Sabbath and Sunday? Your opinion is very important. And it can awaken others to understand the time we are living in. Rome never forgets its purposes. It just changes its methods, adjusts its discourse, and waits for the right moment to act. For centuries, papal power dominated nations, dictated laws, and defined what was right and wrong in the eyes of the Christian world. But when the Protestant Reformation broke its chains, Rome learned a lesson. Direct rule breeds resistance, disguised rule breeds voluntary submission. Today, what was once imposition has become dialogue. What was once persecution now presents itself as unity. And what was once called tradition is now presented as a global necessity. Silently, the Vatican positions itself at the center of the planet's major decisions. At meetings between political leaders, at climate conferences, and in calls for world peace, its influence is clear, but rarely questioned. Since the announcement of the 2025 Jubilee, Rome has been calling nations to a time of reconciliation. But those who observe closely realize that this holy year is actually a rehearsal for something bigger, a spiritual and political movement that prepares the ground for 2026. In official documents, papal speeches, and ecumenical pronouncements, one message is repeated. It is time for a common rest, a day for the family and the planet. The language seems harmless, but the goal is an old one. To restore Sunday as the sign of Christian unity and obedience to the power of Rome. While the world applauds the ecological appeal, the real purpose advances in silence. And few realize that, under the cloak of peace, the stage is being set for the greatest test of faithfulness in human history. From the earliest centuries of Christianity, Rome sought something that would distinguish it. A sign of spiritual authority over all who professed the name of Christ. When the sanctity of the Sabbath was gradually forgotten, a new day was put in its place, Sunday, the first day of the week, exalted as a memorial of the resurrection. But behind this change was more than a simple liturgical choice. There was a declaration of power. The Catholic Catechism itself acknowledges that the change from Saturday to Sunday has no biblical basis, but rests on the authority of the Church. And that is exactly what Rome has always wanted to prove. That it has the power to change times and laws, as prophesied in Daniel 7 verse 25. For centuries, Sunday was presented as a sign of universal Christian faith. A day of worship and rest that would unite all peoples under the same religious banner. But spiritually, it became the symbol of human authority over divine law. while Saturday represents obedience to the Creator. Sunday represents obedience to the creature. It is the visible sign of a system that has placed itself above the Word of God, and now seeks to restore the dominion it exercised during the Middle Ages. In Revelation 13, John sees a beast that demands worship and imposes a mark on everyone, great and small. This prophecy does not speak only of politics or religion, it speaks of spiritual authority. And Sunday, elevated as a universal holy day, will be the mark of this allegiance to the power that opposes the law of the Most High. Rome knows what this day represents. Therefore, it works to make the world accept it not as a religious imposition, but as an expression of faith and unity. And when this acceptance is complete, Sunday will cease to be just a custom, to become a worldwide decree of obedience to an authority that is not divine. While the world exalts Sunday as a symbol of faith and unity, the Bible points to another day, a day that was not created by men, but sanctified by the God of the universe himself. Since creation, the Sabbath has been set as an everlasting sign between the Creator and his people. You shall surely keep my Sabbaths, declares the Lord. For it is a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you. Exodus 31 verse 13. No other commandment carries such spiritual depth. The Sabbath is the seal of faithfulness to God, the weekly reminder that He alone is worthy of worship. In a world that exalts man and despises divine principles, keeping the Sabbath is recognizing the Creator's authority above all earthly powers. In Ezekiel 20 verse 20, the Lord reaffirms, "Sanctify my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am the Lord your God." This seal is not just a commandment, it is a covenant bond, a mark of belonging. When Rome changed the day of worship, it did not merely alter a calendar. It attempted to erase the sign of divine government and replace God's seal with a human sign of authority. But God has always preserved a faithful people who continue to hold high the banner of the Sabbath as a memorial of creation and a symbol of redemption. The Sabbath will be, in the end times, the supreme test of loyalty. Not because of the day itself, but because of what it represents. The choice between obeying God or men, between remaining under the seal of the Creator or accepting the mark of a system that opposes His law. Amid religious confusion and social pressures, God is sealing those who decide to remain faithful to His commandment. And when the final decree is proclaimed, these will be recognized as those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Revelation 12 verse 17. The Sabbath is not just a day. It is the sign of eternal truth, the divine seal engraved on the minds and hearts of the faithful. The prophecies are moving silently, but the stage is already being set. What once seemed distant is now taking shape before our eyes. In recent decades, the world has witnessed a subtle but constant transformation. Religious discourse and political discourse have begun to merge. And what was once a matter of faith has now become a matter of global politics. The Vatican, through its encyclicals and conferences, has positioned itself as the moral voice of the planet. Documents such as Laudato Si and Laudate Deum have brought to the center of the global debate an agenda that, at first glance, speaks of ecology, but which, between the lines, proposes a new lifestyle with a common day of rest for all. In the name of sustainability and care for our common home, religious and government leaders have begun to advocate for a weekly global break. And the most accepted suggestion is precisely Sunday, presented as the ideal day to restore man's harmony with nature and with God. In 2025, the world will be invited to participate in the Universal Jubilee, proclaimed by Rome as a time of reconciliation and forgiveness. But attentive observers realize that this Jubilee is only a rehearsal, the starting point for something much bigger that will take shape in the coming years. Everything indicates that 2026 could be the year when the proposals discussed at religious and environmental summits will begin to be transformed into concrete actions. European countries are already discussing laws that encourage the closure of businesses on Sundays. Companies and unions advocate a global day of rest as a way to balance work and family life. And international organizations, under the influence of the Vatican, point to this measure as necessary for the good of the planet. The discourse is beautiful, noble, and seemingly fair. But spiritually, it is the disguised return of an ancient imposition. A system that, in the name of unity, will seek to impose worship on a day that God never sanctified. History is repeating itself. The pressure is mounting. And while many believe they are defending the environment, the world is being led into the final prophetic test. The one that will separate those who obey God's word from those who follow the decrees of men. Prophecies have always shown that in the end times, religious power and civil power would once again walk side by side. And that is exactly what is beginning to happen before the eyes of the world. In recent years, we have seen nations uniting around global causes such as the environment, sustainable economics, and the pursuit of peace. These agendas, however noble they may seem, are becoming the basis of a new global morality, in which spiritual and social values will be defined not by the Bible, but by international agreements. The United Nations, which previously limited itself to political issues, now speaks openly about collective spiritual responsibility and harmony between faith and sustainability. Documents and conferences supported by the Vatican point in the same direction. The need for a global rest, a common day of pause, which unites humanity under an ideal of balance and solidarity. Rome has been the main voice in this dialogue. Its representatives participate in global forums, influence joint statements, and are often treated as moral authorities superior to political leaders themselves. The language is carefully crafted, words like Sunday are rarely used. But the concept is the same, a sacred time of collective rest, presented as the solution to the human and climate crisis. The prophecy of Revelation 17 describes a woman, a symbol of religious power, sitting on a beast, which represents the kingdoms of the earth. This union indicates the final alliance between religion and politics. A world system in which civil powers will execute the decisions of a spiritual authority. And it is in this scenario that the UN and the major nations come into play. With global laws, treaties, and policies that, under the guise of the common good, may restrict religious freedom and determine when and how the world should rest. Civil power will be used to strengthen religious power. And when Sunday is exalted as the official day of humanity, those who remain faithful to the Lord's Sabbath will be seen as rebels, extremists, and enemies of world peace. The wheels are already in motion. The prophecy of Revelation 13 comes to life before us. And he exercised all the authority of the first beast, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast. The world is being prepared to obey, not by faith, but by force. Rome leads. The nations follow. And the UN provides the stage where prophecy is being fulfilled, quietly, step by step. In the end times, it will not be only Sunday that will be exalted. Those who keep the Sabbath will be placed at the center of the conflict. As the world unites around human laws and decrees, Sabbath keepers will be seen as obstacles to global peace and unity. Not because of rebellion or insubordination, but simply because they have chosen to obey the law of the Creator rather than the decrees of men. Revelation 12 verse 17 clearly reveals. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commands and hold to the testimony of Jesus. This is the faithful remnant, those who stand firm even when the whole of society bows to the pressure of the world. The target will be twofold. Spiritual, to discredit marginalize, and try to convince people to abandon the Sabbath. Political and social laws and regulations that will pressure everyone to observe Sunday, making faith in the Sabbath an act of resistance. Faithfulness to the Sabbath will be more than a religious practice. It will be a test of loyalty to God Himself. A visible sign of who has chosen to remain under divine authority and who has submitted to human authority. And it is at this point that many will realize that obeying God will no longer be easy or popular. The remnant will become the target of criticism, subtle persecution, and social pressure. But it will be precisely this faithfulness that will mark those who are ready for the Lord's return. The conflict is no longer just about one day of the week. It is about who controls the loyalty of humanity. God or men. The confrontation will not be just about one day of the week. It will be about loyalty, obeying God or men. The Sabbath, as a divine seal, will be the supreme test. Those who remain faithful will be seen as obstacles to world unity, while those who give in will accept the imposition of Sunday. Revelation 12 verse 17 warns, "They made war on the rest of her offspring." Those who keep God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. The world will be under pressure, but faithfulness to the Creator will reveal who is prepared for the Lord's return. The test is inevitable, and 2026 could mark the beginning of the decisive point of this final trial. Faced with the final test, it is not enough to simply know the truth. It must be practiced. The faithful remnant must strengthen their relationship with God. Study the Word, pray continually, and keep their minds and hearts steadfast in faith. It is not a matter of human strength, but of total dependence on the Creator. Those who remain faithful to the Sabbath, even in the face of global pressure, show that they are sealed by God and ready for the Lord's return. As Ellen White warned, in the last days there will be a people who will keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. Preparing also means watching for the signs of the times, understanding prophecy, and discerning the movements of the world. It is through this spiritual preparation that God's people will resist deception and remain upright, even when the pressure becomes intense. What will be required in 2026 is not just courage. It is daily faithfulness, steadfastness in the truth, and absolute trust in God's promise. 2026 may mark the beginning of the greatest spiritual confrontation of the modern era. The Sabbath will be tested, Sunday will be exalted, and the whole world will be faced with a choice: obey God or obey men. But there is one promise that never fails. Those who remain faithful to the Creator will not be forsaken. God's seal remains on His faithful ones, and the final victory is already assured. The question that remains in every heart is clear. Will you remain faithful to the Lord's Sabbath, even when the whole world bows down to Sunday? It's not just about one day of the week. It's about loyalty, faith, and commitment to the Creator. If this warning has touched your heart, do your part. Leave your like and strengthen this message. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any studies and prophetic warnings. And comment here. Are you ready to remain faithful to the Sabbath, even in the face of the pressures that 2026 may bring? Your decision is not just personal. It is part of God's great plan, which separates the faithful from those who follow men. Share this video and help others understand the signs of the times.
If you